feel very called to become a member of the Catholic Church.
Love the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
So, how about we do a radio show? What do you think?
Okay.
We're just kind of in here flitting around, going about our business, and the next thing you know, the music starts. And
here we are.
Here we are. 1-800-585-9396 is our toll-free number. EWTN's Open Line Wednesday. Father Mitch is in the house. Grab one of these open phone lines while they're available. 1-800-585-9396. If you get a busy signal, hang on. We will try to work through as many of you as we can during the course of the hour. If you'd like to send Father Mitch an email, the email is openline@ewtn.com. If you're outside the United States and Canada, you can give us a call. Your number is 1-205-271-2985, and we will put you straight to the front of the line at 1-205-271-2985, or you can text your question to Father Mitch. Text the letters EWTN to 55000. Wait for a response. Text your first name and your question. Message and data rates may apply. I'm Jack Williams. Elena Rodriguez produces the program. Your call screener, Mr. Matt Gubensky. And our host, as he is every single Wednesday, Father Mitch Pacwa. Father, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine.
You know, I'm out of breath, and we came downstairs to get here. There's no excuse for that.
No, don't be careful.
I'm going to be in cardiac rehab with you if I don't
hey.
watch my P's and Q's here. You got a couple of emails there,
Yeah,
Father?
I do. The one is for Barbara, so I have to give her hers.
Okay.
Because I don't know anything about the Girl Scouts. Hi, Father Mitch. If Catholic parishes start closing in this country due to high taxes, would it be wrong for me to send a hearty percentage of my normal budgeted donation amount to CNEWA, which is to build churches in Iraq? Think of another way for me to use my donations in this country in order to keep the money out of the government coffers. Thanks, Jane. Well, first of all, Jane, there's no risk at this point of the churches losing their tax-exempt status. That's not on the docket. And your contribution to your local parish is still what you can do and need to do. If should the government change, I mean, we certainly saw sometimes during the past year or so various threats, and there are groups that would want to threaten the churches, not because they want the tax money, but they just want to close down the churches.
Yeah.
That's their goal. But what we can do is, certainly find other ways to donate. Until that happens, I wouldn't worry about it. I hope most Americans would not quietly take that. But, this is, think of all that the government would then have to do, and given their general good competence at running the stuff they already have, this may be more problematic for them if they confiscate our churches and schools and hospitals.
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yep. Dear Father, I have a close friend, and her great-nephew just told his mother that he doesn't want to be confirmed. The reason he gives is he questions how can, quote, all that stuff be true, including the miracles of Jesus. All I know about the family is that they live in California. What advice would you give to evangelize that young man? Also, can you recommend any books that might be helpful to the young man or his parents? Thank you for your priesthood and for being there. Susan. Susan, one of the things that the young man, like many other young people today, has to be treated with great seriousness. They don't want to be tricked or fooled, and that's a good thing. they ought not want to be tricked or fooled. And there are a number of ways. I'm trying to think. There are, I don't know of an exact Catholic equivalent to this book, but there was a book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict.
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain type of apologetics on these various issues. Now, of course, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that the kind of evidence you give this young man cannot be scientific evidence, just as you cannot perform a scientific experiment to prove that Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo. What you have is a forensic type of evidence. In other words, there are many eyewitnesses to the defeat, both on the French and the English and the Allied side. So this is something that you have to look at in a different way, the way you would, say, a crime scene or some other historical event. And what this young man, again, there are, I have to think about it. I had a guest on not too long ago who, yes, this is the book. It's a book by a very fine Catholic who wrote a book called Hostile Witnesses. If you could check that out here. In Hostile Witnesses, he gives the testimony of the people who hated Christ or opposed him and opposed the church and Christianity through the centuries. And he brings out very wonderfully that the enemies of the faith were the ones who actually give evidence for the miracles.
Gary Machuda.
Yeah, it's a Gary Machuda.
And it is available at EWTN Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Yes, definitely. So you want to get him that. Now, you have to also ask of him, young man, if you want to be open to examining this evidence, we will give it to you. If you are already closed-minded, then you will suffer the consequences of your closed-mindedness. But if you're open to looking at the data about the faith, then I certainly would recommend Gary Machuda. And then you might also, it's Josh somebody or other who did, Josh McDowell did Evidence That Demands a Verdict. All right, and let's see. And here's another question. Are there liturgical observations for the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes or Fatima, Kibeho, Akita, Amsterdam? If not, why not? Weren't they at least approved as authentic by the local bishop? Are there any observed at least locally? Thank you very much. Very grateful in San Francisco Bay Area, Marta. Marta, certainly the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes is celebrated in the universal calendar. But not all of the other apparitions do. I don't think they do. You can do a local celebration of a Mass of the Blessed Virgin Mary. There are a number of Masses of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and at Fatima, they of course celebrate the anniversaries and other important times at the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima, but it's not on the universal calendar. It remains local. As far as the other ones, I've not shown anything like that. And let me just take one real quick one. A friend insists that the Dead Sea Scrolls show that Jesus had blood brothers. What is the truth? Thanks, and God bless you for your wonderful work. Sandra Beck Hernandez. Sandra, I would insist that your friend has never read the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have. I've read them all. And there is nothing. Now, it's always hard to prove a negative, but there is nothing there. But you can get a copy of all the text, every single fragment that has more than 3 words to it. And it's published by Geza Vermes, Vermes. You can read it there and see they don't mention Jesus Christ. They don't mention his brothers. This is all nonsense. And like I say, your friend has never read the documents because he's making that up.
Or at least someone made it up.
Or someone made it up to him. That's also a possibility.
Just getting started on an open line. Wednesday, Father Mitch Pacwa in the house. If you'd like to talk to Father Mitch, the number's 1-800-585-9396. Toll free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. Open line Wednesday with Father Mitch.
Hi everyone, Jerry Usher here. I'm the host of Vocation Boom Radio, heard every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on EWTN Radio. I hope you make time to join me this week as I'll feature another vocation director, Father Dennis Shulkins. He is the Director of Vocations for the Diocese of Wheeling, Charleston, West Virginia. We'll hear about his vocation story and about what God is doing to raise up more priestly vocations in his diocese. Hope you can join me.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
The woman was caught, they said in the scriptures, in adultery. That thing always burns me up. I want to know what happened to the guy. You know? I never understood that. I don't have any problem with any doctrine. I don't have any problem with any of the scriptures except at one point. They were caught in adultery. It takes 2 people to have an adulterous affair. Where did he go? We'll know in eternity. I hope I'm looking down. Because
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
The National Catholic Register is America's most complete Catholic news source, with a comprehensive view of the world from a distinctly Catholic perspective. For the latest issues, people, and events shaping the world as we know it, visit ncregister.com.
This is Father Joseph Mary.
This is Dr. Ray Guarendi, host of The Doctor Is In.
This is Father Leonard Mary of the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word. Have a blessed Lent from all of us at the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
We have got some of the greatest towns in America waiting to talk to you, Father Mitch.
Well, giddy up.
The first one's Garland, Texas. Al's in the Republic of Texas, listening to EWTN on Guadalupe Radio. Al, you're on with Father Mitch.
Hi, Father Mitch. I think I've got a real good question for you today.
Oh, good. I like good questions.
Here goes. I
hope I have a good answer.
Yes. Let's see if we can engage in this one, and I'm not completely off my rocker here, but okay. I understand that the church has, is it 36 doctors of the church?
I'm not sure the exact number.
It's about 35 or so. I'm not sure exact number either, but it's in that area.
Sounds
in any
good.
case, from what I understand, the church does not receive all of the propositions from these 36 doctors of the church. I hold in high esteem Thomas Aquinas.
Yes.
Very high esteem.
I too.
But from what I understand, not everything that St. Thomas Aquinas proposed was received or is received by the church.
Right.
Can you talk more about that? And is that, something that we can see a thread in all of the other doctors of the church?
Well, here's one of the things that you see with a number of the doctors of the church, is that they would respond to the various issues that they had proposed to them on the basis of what they already knew. And I'll give a classic example. St. Thomas rejected the notion of the Immaculate Conception. So did another doctor, St. Bernard of Clairvaux. But the problem for them is that the question was asked poorly, and they responded to the question. Sometimes I have the same problem. People get mad at me for a certain answer I give, but I'm answering the question that was given to me and not a question that this other person had. So the question that was asked of Thomas, and actually goes back to Bernard of Clairvaux, is, was the Blessed Virgin Mary immaculate before her conception? And both Bernard and Thomas rejected that position because she didn't exist before her conception. That was the issue. To say that she was immaculate before her conception would be to hold the opinion of Origen that the souls existed before souls existed before conception, and we rejected that at the Second Council of Constantinople. But later on, St. John Duns Scotus rephrased the question: was Mary immaculate at the moment of her conception? And by rephrasing the question, he gave the reasons yes. And because this had not been a dogma of the church at this point, it was a disputed point, the Dominicans argued against him using St. Thomas, but they were still dealing with the wrong question. Later on, John Duns Scotus' rephrasing of the question changed the issue, and the Pope, various popes basically suggested that the Dominicans stop arguing. And then later on, still, the Immaculate Conception was decreed a dogma in 1854. But, that's an example of how they deal with the question that they have and not the question that somebody else wants them to have. And that's what I should tell my students. I used that as an example frequently in my classes. If you ask me a question, I will do my best to answer it. But make sure your question is good, because a good answer starts with a good question. So that's always the case. And a lot of that would apply to the other fathers as well. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. I guess one other quick question would be, in my mind, we have scripture, and I don't know if everything has an order here, but I have a tendency to say that scripture is the highest, tradition is second highest. Would we say that the teachings of the, like Augustine or anybody like that, to be third highest in importance?
Yeah, we wouldn't. Here's how we put it. The three legs of the stool that we rest on are, as you said, scripture, and then secondly, apostolic tradition. That is, the traditions that go back to the apostles. And then thirdly, the magisterial teaching of the church, the councils and papal decrees. And then the Father, and with the tradition, it's when the fathers hold something universally, then that is accepted as authoritative. So, for instance, the fathers were universally opposed to birth control and abortion, and the church has remained faithful to that through the centuries. And so the universal teaching of the fathers, but that would be something of a fourth leg, if you would, but the magisterial teaching of the church would be the third leg. Okay.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate the question. 1-800-585-9396 is our toll-free number. Thomas is in Pasadena, Texas, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Thomas, are you an urban cowboy?
Hello?
Hi, Thomas.
Hello, Thomas.
What's your question?
My first question is, how come the churches don't talk about Judgment Day, and are we in Revelations?
All right. In terms, as a matter of fact, the Catholic Church, every year has, as a matter of fact, usually toward the end of every liturgical year, we have a series of teachings on the final judgment. We'll have readings from the book of Revelation, and we'll also do teachings about Christ's judgment, his second coming in judgment, and that's part of the cycle. And then the first Sunday of Advent. Remember, Advent begins the church's year, liturgical year. The first Sunday of Advent begins with teaching about the second coming of Christ and his judgment of the living and the dead. So, and we also repeat that every Sunday and other great feasts when we say the creed. We announce as our faith that Jesus Christ will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. And we also say that we believe in the resurrection of the dead. So there's a lot of, we include it throughout. Even after the consecration at Mass, a number of the acclamations also point toward the second coming of Christ. And then in the prayer after the Our Father, it points to the second coming of Christ until he comes again. So that it permeates our teaching, because the teaching about Christ's judgment and his second coming is not an arbitrary or extra teaching. It is an essential doctrine of Christianity. So we do teach that. Now, in what the church does avoid, because the Catholic Church is 2,000 years old, and we've seen lots of people say, these are the end times. Now it's the end times. And the attitude that we take is, we are like the angels. The angels don't know if this is the end times. And we don't know either. What we must do is always be ready. That's what Christ taught us. Don't worry. He doesn't want us to worry about when. It's not for you to know the times or the seasons, is what he told the apostles right before his ascension. And when he taught about his second coming in Matthew 24 and 25 and Mark 13 and Luke 22, he always emphasized, don't worry about the times. And you don't know that. The angels don't know. You don't need to know. You always must be ready and alert. Always be watchful. And that's why my standard approach is that knowing the end times is a management issue. And God is management. I'm in sales. I'm here to preach the gospel and call people to be ready for the judgment, because even before the end times, every individual will have their individual judgment. And then there'll also be the public judgment at the end of time. So we must always be ready for it. In terms of being in the book of Revelation, we'll leave that up to God to know if we're there or not.
Still plenty of time for your phone calls. 1-800-585-9396. Toll free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. EWTN's Open Line Wednesday with Father Mitch Pacwa.
Our brief meditation for Wednesday of the second week of Lent is one that opens up to us and reminds us where we're going at the end of Lent. The last week of Lent is called Passiontide, and it's when we go through the events of the Passion, experiencing them, and then rejoicing on Easter morning with the understanding of the mystery that was revealed on the first day of the resurrection 2,000 years ago. And the Church gives us in the readings a very, very powerful and moving quotation. It says in Matthew 20:17, "And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 aside, and on the way he said to them, 'Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered up by the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles, to be mocked and scourged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day.'" And what did he mean by rise from the dead? As Lent goes on, I strongly suggest to you that you begin to put into your meditations the theme of the suffering and death of our Lord Jesus Christ. You have to look at the crucifix. It's a sign of suffering, and it's a sign of hope that God suffers with us. A French poet, Claudel, said, "Christ did not stop all suffering, explain all suffering, but by his own suffering, he made the possibility of sanctifying all other suffering."
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
1-800-585-9396. We've got a Facebook question from Helen. She says, "Father Mitch, Israel is now a nation again since 1948. There's talk of rebuilding the temple. Is this prophetic?" She's referring to Julian the Apostate from 360 AD.
I don't know that it's prophetic. It's certainly problematic because, in fact, the Muslims have held control over the Temple Mount for a longer time than the people of Israel had control of it. They had control of it for about 1,000 years, and the Muslims have had their mosque there for 1,300. And, getting to rebuild, it's the third holiest mosque in Islam, and getting control of that in order to rebuild a Jewish temple would be a very serious issue. I know some people speak very glibly about doing that, but it's not a glib thing to go and tear down somebody else's house of worship, especially a very special one, in order to rebuild one that hasn't been around for 2,000 years. And the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. That's almost 2,000 years ago. And it would be highly problematic to build that. And I am, not unlike the question about the book of Revelation and such, I don't see myself as the scenery director for the end times either. That I should be promoting or not promoting the building of the temple. This is something that would be a dialogue between Muslims and Jews. Christians don't have control of it at all. We had for a short time during the Crusades, but they turned the mosque into a church, but it's back to being a mosque. And so I would think that it's better for us not to speculate about other people's property disputes with other people. Let's just focus on what we have to do in terms of preaching the gospel.
Liz D'Souza is watching on YouTube in Brazil, and she wants you to say hi to the people watching in Brazil.
Well, we'd love to greet all the people in Brazil.
Just look right into that camera and tell Liz she said hey.
Liz, thank you for watching from Brazil. And I assume that it's a lot warmer and less snowy down there than it is here in the United States. We don't have any snow, but we've got some
it's cold today.
Cool weather. So God bless you all in Brazil, and keep the faith growing.
Marilyn's in North Kansas City, Missouri, listening on AM 1090. Marilyn, you're on with Father Mitch.
Oh, hi, Father Pacwa.
Hi, what can we do for you?
I remember my father being extremely upset when girl altar servers appeared on the altar.
Yeah.
He was in the seminary for years. And I know Cardinal Burke has recently come out and said that he felt that girl altar servers was an impediment to vocations to the priesthood. So my question to you is, where did this come about, girl altar servers, and what, in your opinion, do you feel that if it's an impediment to vocations?
Yeah, a couple things. I remember when this was getting started. It was mostly done in disobedience at the beginning, because it always had been boys servers. And there were a lot of parishes that would just have the girls to give girls an equal opportunity with the boys. Now, I went to seminary with a number of the early members of the Women's Ordination Conference. These were Catholic women who wanted to get women ordained as priests. And they themselves said very explicitly that getting girl servers is a way to get them started along the path towards wanting to be ordained priests. That was explicit. That's not something I suppose that they might have thought. It's something that they said in my hearing, and that they wrote in some of their literature. They also wrote or said in their conference, especially Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza had said that the reason that we want to get women in the priesthood is to destroy the priesthood and all patriarchy. That was one. And they also figured that they could get into the priesthood and start legislating changes on birth control, abortion, etc. These were some of the things percolating in those days. And there was a lot of that stuff going on. I don't hear it anymore. But back in the 70s, when this started, and then, Pope, I don't remember if it was Pope John Paul, I think, who said that it would be okay, because there's nothing inherent in being an altar server that requires males to do that. It's not the same as priesthood. But I have seen a couple things. Do you have kids, Marilyn?
No.
No, okay.
No.
One of the things that you notice with kids, especially in grammar school, that oftentimes they don't want to do what the girls are doing. That boys won't do stuff, that they'll cede to the girls to do what they're doing, and they do other stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's the way little boys think. And so if girls start to serve, boys say, okay, let them. And they'll abandon the situation because they don't want to be associated with girls. That's not an uncommon dynamic in little boys. And girls sometimes feel the same. It's oftentimes mutual. And one of the things that does happen in parishes, not always, but quite commonly, the girls dominate. Once you allow them to do so, they dominate. And it's something that boys will just cede that. Okay, I'll let the girls do it. If I don't have to, I won't. Because they are much more concerned about being cool in front of the other boys. And they don't want to do anything uncool that a girl can do. So they cede that. Happens in schools. We've seen this in some of our schools. One of the advantages of single-gender schools is that it's good for the boys. Because when we saw in some of our Jesuit schools, when the girls came in, the boys stopped asking questions in class. They let the girls do it. Because they don't want to look stupid in front of a girl when they're in high school. That's different than little boys. They just don't want girl cooties. But the high school boys will do anything to avoid looking stupid in front of a girl. And so they won't ask questions. And the girls dominate. So it's something where boys are fairly ready to cede their place. And one of the things that results from that, we see this at church. How many times are there more women than men? Because the guys don't feel that they have a role there, so they cede the situation to the women. And guys need a certain kind of esprit de corps. That this is cool for guys to do, and that's not theological reasoning. I'm just reasoning as someone who taught high school and college, and I've seen these things go on. So that's the practical element, and it is often the case that boys who serve at Mass do consider the priesthood, but if they don't, and if they start to think that church is a place for girls and not for me, then they'll sort of just withdraw. So does that sound like real life experience?
I understand. I go to an FSSP parish, so it's very beautiful.
Yeah, and I had a priest friend who he's not FSSP or anything, but he had trained the boys well. They were just precise in their prayer. And this was a Hispanic and black parish, African American and Hispanic, and a few white kids from the suburbs came too. And they all wanted he would sometimes have 20 servers up there. They wanted to be part of it. Mm-hmm. And because that's sort of the way kids are. And you just got to deal with that reality of kids.
God bless you, Marilyn. Appreciate the phone call. Next stop, Palm Beach, Florida. Hebrew is in Palm Beach, listening on the TuneIn Radio app. Hebrew, you're on with Father Mitch.
Father Mitch, it's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Thanks. What's your question?
All right. The question that I have for you, I was on a conversation with some friends who believe that Jesus is Michael the Archangel.
Oh, they're Jehovah's Witnesses?
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
Yeah, so what they were saying is that the fact that we know from the Old Testament that the angels, we have some angels who were able to eat.
Yeah.
We see that on Genesis 18 and 19.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, they claim that these angels, they were acting like human beings. The fact that, would that be a good support to say that Jesus was also a spirit, and when he became man, he was acting like a human being, and then after resurrection, he was again a spirit. But even though he was eating, even though he ate fish with the disciples, but he was still a spirit, like or Michael the Archangel.
By the way, let me ask you this: what country are you from originally?
I'm from Haiti.
From Haiti, okay.
Yes, I'm not Jewish. My name is Hebrew, but
I know. I just was wondering. I didn't catch your accent. I said, huh. So a couple things. What we see in Genesis chapter 18 is that the angels, certainly are given curds, milk, a calf, and bread and water, and they stood by while they ate. And this is something that you see as, did they need the nourishment? Of course not. They're pure spirits. But they took these shapes as humans to eat. Whereas Jesus is not, and this is where the Jehovah's Witnesses have a real problem, because Jehovah's Witnesses say that Jesus was a spirit, whereas Jesus tells the apostles to touch him. And he denies that he is a spirit. If you remember in Luke chapter 24, that after the apostles, as a matter of fact, here's the words of Christ in Luke 24, verse 38. Why are you troubled? Why do questionings arise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit has not flesh and bones, as you see that I have. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses' doctrine that Jesus is a pure spirit flies flat against what Jesus himself says when he says that he has flesh and bones. Is that not correct?
Yes, it is correct.
And then, in verse 41, he says, have you anything here to eat? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish. And he took it and ate it before them. He insists that he is not a spirit. And then the week later, Thomas also touches him and puts his hand in his wounds. So this is something that Jesus is not a spirit, and that's why he's a physical person with flesh and bones, and he is able to eat fish because he is physical. Does that help?
All right.
Also, one other thing, Hebrew, that I would emphasize. They also say that Jesus is Michael the Archangel, right?
Yes.
All right. And they say that the reasoning on that?
I have no idea. That's because I have no idea.
It's a very foolish notion. They teach that because in 1 Thessalonians 4 it says that he will come with the voice of an archangel. And the only archangel named is Michael. Therefore, he must be Michael. Now, that is specious reasoning. When it says that he will come with the voice of an archangel, it doesn't mean that he is an archangel, but rather the archangels will announce his coming at the end of time. That's what the text clearly means. And secondly, there's this great line that that you find in the book of Jude, that when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, disputed about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce reviling judgment upon him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." And Jesus, was strongly condemnatory towards the devil. Now, if Michael doesn't do that, how is it possible for Jesus to be Michael when he himself does that? So this is, something that you have to keep in mind. They're making up a very false doctrine, and it is not worth believing.
Thank you, Hebrew. Appreciate the phone call. We'll fly over to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina now, where Jose is waiting. He's listening on the EWTN app. Jose, you're on with Father Mitch.
Good afternoon. This is Jose. How you all doing?
Fine, thanks, Jose. What can we do for you?
I got a question for you in a situation with a family. I feel like Jesus not being welcome in the family, and I just received from my daughter and son-in-law out of Italy a so-called amulet of what they call, I believe, the eye.
Yeah, the evil eye. The evil eye.
Yes. How is that in concert? But I believe it's against the first commandment.
Yes, you are right, Jose. We don't do amulets. Amulets are not, and believing in the evil eye. See, what it's a common belief. It's not only Italy. It's all over the Mediterranean world. It's something. It's a custom that when somebody looks at your stuff and wants it, they have a covetous eye. You can reverse it by having an amulet and have the eye look back at them, so the covetousness goes back to them. That's nonsense, absolute nonsense, and we don't. That is not a good thing. It may be the way a lot of people were taught, based on certain, elements of their culture. But it is not in the gospel. It's contrary to the gospel. And the church does reject the use of amulets with magical potions and stuff like that as a sin against the first commandment. So you're right, Jose.
Thanks, Jose. We'll head to Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Abraham is in Dartmouth, listening on Radio Corps Marie. Abraham, you're on with Father Mitch. Abraham, go ahead with your question.
Yes, hi, Father.
Hi, what can we do for you today?
I need some help dealing with, my porn addiction.
Okay.
I've been doing it probably since I was, 14.
Yeah.
And now I'm 24, and...
So it's a 10-year addiction. Now, let me ask you this. You obviously don't feel comfortable with it, right?
I don't.
Right.
And I have Asperger's. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, sure.
Well, having that doesn't help because I probably have OCD and I keep watching it, and then I feel bad, and then I watch it again. And
Right. And this is something that is dealing with an extra, in addition to the attraction to the pornography, you have this other issue, two other issues that make it more difficult. You're right. That makes it much more difficult. A couple things. Abraham, do you notice a difference between when you are attracted to look at the porn and how you feel about yourself after you've looked at it?
Oh, I feel like...
Right. Yeah, you don't feel good about yourself. We won't go into too many of the comparisons to what you might feel like, but you don't feel good about yourself. Abraham, let me use an example from my own experience. I don't eat donuts. In fact, I haven't eaten a donut since 1986. Not because I am so virtuous, but I remember very well when back in 86, the last time I ate a donut, it just sat in my stomach and I felt terrible. I was accustomed in earlier times to, if I ate a donut, I would be able to burn it right up. But my metabolism had changed. I felt that change. And eating it, when I think of a donut, I don't think how sweet and tasty it is. I remember what that lump of greasy, sugary dough felt like sitting in my stomach, and it was miserable. People who stop getting drunk have the same thing. It's one thing to think about the good time you might have drinking. It's more important to remember how nasty the hangover is. And you remember the hangover, say, oh, no, I don't want to go there. One of the ways that you can start is fix in your mind how you feel after you've been looking at pornography. Get anchor that feeling well in your imagination. And remember that feeling before you start to look at it. And use that as a way to say, oh, no, I don't want to go. I don't like feeling like that. That lasts longer than any of the pleasure I might feel. So I want to, just like, that lump of dough sat in my stomach a lot longer than the donut was in my mouth. That's a good way to get started. Secondly, I've talked to a number of prison inmates. One of the things that they do to help them deal with various sexual temptations is every time they're in a situation of temptation, what they do is they start to say the rosary. And that becomes an antidote. So it's not only that you avoid the nasty feeling, but you also take an antidote. And that this becomes a trigger in your mind. I will say the rosary. And if you need to, go for a walk when you say it. Go away from where you might be. Go away from your computer or wherever. And just go for a walk and say the rosary and overcome it that way. Those two elements will be very helpful to you. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, God. And also, we'll
Abraham.
keep you in my prayers as I say my rosary today.
Quickly, we'll head to Midland, Texas. Marlena's in Midland, listening on Guadalupe Radio. Marlena, we got about a minute and a half left with Father Mitch. What's your question?
Hello, Father Mitch.
Yes.
I've got a problem for some time now. My brother married a Jehovah Witness, and I figured you'd be great to answer that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that my mom, we're all Catholic, but she was too now, so that they will not argue about their son. They already have a son, so that he doesn't, one doesn't want the other one to go to church. They don't go to church at all.
Oh, great.
Yes, and so my nephew has not been baptized or anything, but my mom wants me to stay out of it, and I feel this need to talk to my brother and her together.
Okay.
But where would I start?
All right. A couple things I want you to do. There is there are a series of books by an ex-Jehovah Witness. His name is Dave. I can think of the title. How to Answer Jehovah Witness. David. I forget his last name now. And he would. You need to read up on Jehovah's Witnesses before you take it on, so that you have.
Go to Catholic.com, and his name escapes me as well, but he has several articles.
And books, too.
Yes,
yeah.
Books, yes.
And you can start to know what they teach, so you can answer precisely the false doctrines that they teach. Also, Walter Martin has some good stuff on the kingdom of the cults.
Very quick blessing.
Lord bless you, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Back at it tomorrow with Father Larry. Until then, God bless.